This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
I have that it's 5:03 and we have 5 people, so plus I think we can go ahead and get started. And before we get into the agenda, I kind of want to say a couple things so that we can put something to rest. I want to assure everyone I'm not anti-pollinator gardens. I would love one. And I would love to see one at my daughter's place because she has bees. But for us to fund the creation of one is not in our purview. The closest that we could come is that we can acquire land for community gardens. Now that's not a pollinator garden. That's little, you cut your piece of property into small lots and they are rented. There's a low rental fee for the people who want them. And they are for vegetables and flowers and what they want to grow. However, I'm sure they keep an eye out for those pretty great big green plants, even if someone said they could have 6 of them. But that means that, and that we can't, all we can do is acquire the land for it. We can't do anything more. And that would also require a town worker to take care of the rental piece and to oversee and get involved if any people got in a fight over a borderline. They have to put up fences between their lines between their property. I don't think we want to, even think about that kind of thing. But it is just not in our purview. And we need to be very careful because we have a lot of people out there in town who don't know what we do, have confusion about what we do, and have written such things on, I don't go in there, but that Mass Live thing about Southampton where you can vent. And there have been such things like community preservation takes all of our money and uses it for non-essentials. And my children don't have school books that they need. Well, there's misinformation here, but there's also a real sense of not spending money in ways that aren't great. And I don't know what those are that these people are thinking about, but anyway, I don't think we could even approach a town meeting with such a thing, and I know it is not acceptable in our list of things. I wish there was some way to help. I think there are places people they could go to and get funds. Community organizations, and also businesses. Easthampton Savings Bank has been a really good supporter in the past of some things, scholarships and things like that. Tractor Supply sells the very things that would be going into some of these gardens. But I just don't want to have to keep saying no. And it just would be better if we didn't think about it again. Any questions?
I'm going to just comment. I know what she's talking about. It's the project that we talked about doing on the water protection
Yeah,
area on Lower Pomeroy Meadow. And it has to do with a project Open Space Committee has brought forward. And I will say Virginia has twisted herself inside out to try to read the guidelines. And I looked at them myself. She's the expert. And I agree entirely. I just know that we do need to put this to rest. And I have the person who's been behind it and worked so hard has been Charlie McDonald. He probably is listening tonight. And I just want to credit him for all the hard work he's done. And that I do think he and I and maybe others can look at other options for funding. And the worst thing would be to go before town meeting with something that fueled those uninformed and negative comments. So I think you can put it to rest, Virginia.
well, I will. I'm not going to do any more looking at it.
Okay.
Our big item tonight, however, is the piece of property that the other piece of property that
That's on Upper Pomeroy Meadow Road. It's the Courtney property. And I think at this point we're saying it's about 76 acres. There's Sierra. She just arrived too. That's good. And so that's why Mark Walmsley is on the call representing Kestrel, because Bridget was with us in the past and was unable to attend tonight. So Mark's, I think, able to be connected to us via phone. So that's where we're at.
Good. Before we get there, the minutes should be accepted. Are there any additions or corrections? I have just one thing. I think in the very first line, we ought to identify the woman from Kestrel Land Trust that's been helping us more than just her name. Say that, just put a little thing in there that she's an employee of Kestrel Land Trust or something like that, so that we know who she is.
Mark, can you say what Bridget's title is?
No, is it Bridget Lively?
Likely.
And she's the conservation manager.
Okay, so if that could just be added behind her name, conservation manager for Kestrel Land Trust. And that will identify who she is. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented with that one addition.
Is there those in favor?
Palmer, aye.
Simmons, aye.
Others?
I think everybody spoke except you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there's Jeannie. No.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain because I just got a chance to join, so I didn't hear what the edits are. Unless you have enough for a quorum to accept the minutes?
Oh, yes.
Okay, then I'll just abstain then for now. I don't want to have to go back, make you go back, okay?
Okay. All right, they've been accepted. So now let's just go to trying to get some of the questions that people had answered. And first of all, Rini, did you get any information on our funds?
I emailed Ed and then told him that we need to have it, that we've been meeting scheduled. And he said that he would get the information. And I think he's made it clear to everybody that his primary and sole job right now is to get the audit done by the end of March. So unless you got something after you had emailed me, he didn't send anything to me, unfortunately.
No. Okay, but maybe I can give a few little, what I have put together. I did get the latest revenue report, which shows that we, just on this last round of taxes, that there was over $130,000 that came in. And now that wouldn't all be going into undesignated, but it does look like 85,000 more could go in to undesignated. And this will have to be where we take this from, I think. But we really don't have to know that until we're actually getting ready to write the article. And okay, let's see if I can remember. Articles are due April 6th?
Yep, 6th.
6th. And the town meeting is May 3rd. So we have to be ready by April 6th with the articles. The other thing that I do have is a report that indicates that all of the things that we have put down to be spent, that's on the splash pad and the greenway, those have been taken out of the whatever figure we have in our undesignated account or the proper account. So that whatever is in the open space and the undesignated would be able to be used for this project.
So to back this off a little bit, again, I think the last report that I have that makes any sense is as of June of 2021. And at that time, the balance in the undesignated column was around $860,000. And of course, that was before splash pad and whatever. But I only bring that out to point out that I don't think that account is in jeopardy.
You're right.
Of being overspent with this project.
I do know at one time when I asked Ed something, he said, you don't need to worry. When we were talking about some of the things. So I think that we're okay there. Now, let's get some questions. And Mark Wamsley is here. Maybe he can help.
I'll certainly do my best to help.
Or maybe you could just kind of explain where we're at with this.
Sure, absolutely. I'll have to rely on Cindy a little bit for help with the numbers, as I'm not able to have any the budget in front of me right now. But I can, again, just generally explain the project. I had actually met with this family several years ago, back in 2018, to look at their property. We had actually been looking at almost identical property right across the Manhattan River from them over in Easthampton, and hoping to conserve that. But it was a wonderful area that jumped off the map at us, being on the Manhattan River and also being in the Barnes Aquifer recharge area. So again, nothing happened as often happens with conservation projects. It went dormant for a little while, but the family reached out to us again recently. One of the family members had died, and the family had wanted to consider, the future of this property, and they wanted. So I went back out, and Kestrel paid for a restricted appraisal of the property and came up with the numbers that are before you. And we presented it to the family, and they were interested in moving forward if we could find a route for conservation. Interestingly enough, the landowners, when we were meeting with them, brought out a postcard from the town of Southampton from the Water Commission, reaching out to them as landowners over the aquifer and saying that, the town may be interested in conserving their land. So that instantly brought to mind the idea that the state's Drinking Water Supply Protection Program grant, which the town of Southampton has used before, first with the Cook Road property, would be available for this property and would be appropriate for it. And we think indeed it is. So my colleague Bridget, who is running this project for Kestrel, reached out to the Board of Water Commissioners, and they were indeed interested. And they have been working to kind of put it together as a project for a grant application coming up soon. I believe it is in May. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look. But yeah, so we're just kind of getting all the ducks in the row, hopefully, and looking for town support. And again, I believe the Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant is a 50-50 matching grant. So they would provide 50% of the funding, and then 50% would have to come locally. It is, again, as is normal with these state grants, a reimbursement grant. So all the money has to be spent up front, and then materials have to be submitted to the state, and the town would get the 50% back. So it's a wonderful property. It has been leased out for farming for several years now. I'm not quite sure who's on it right now, but I know the Fletchers have grown corn there. So there's a section of it that's agricultural, and the section of it that is wooded and goes right down to the Manhan River, where there's just wonderful wildlife habitat along that stretch. We found several wood turtles teeming with trout. I mean, it's a really wonderful property. So hopefully that whole stretch, you know, which connects up to the Glendale Road area and then all the way out to the Pomeroy Mountain area, you know, has been a focus of conservation both for Kestrel and I know the town for some time. So that is the project in a nutshell. Again, I'm speaking a little secondhand, you know, because my colleague is the one really in charge of it, but I can answer any questions that I can that you might have.
So we would vote to put the whole money, the whole 400 and what?
It's 390,200 is the total amount. And the idea would be that the state reimbursement would be 192,000. And I'm looking at the application right now, and we would have to ultimately, after the reimbursement, be able to provide up to 197,000.
So those numbers are different than the water department, the water commission submission, because they had originally estimated 443,700. So that number is now different.
No, wait a sec, Bob. I think okay, nope. I looked at an old application. Now I've got the correct one up. Apologies. I was searching while we were talking.
So the
Bob is right. It's
443,700 is correct.
Correct. I'm please ignore my first comment. Okay, 443,700 is the total estimated cost. Bridget went back to Ed Gibson to make sure she was, you know, capturing the legal type of aspect of this, the fee applications, et cetera. So that 213,700 is expected from the state drinking water protection grant. And after the reimbursement, CPC would need to supply 230,000. That's the correct number on the most recent application.
I think if we carefully word a motion on this, I think we can incorporate both the total amount and a reimbursement of the 200 some odd thousand amount into one motion, and perhaps that would satisfy going to town meeting in the same way rather than having to have two articles on the town meeting warrant.
Yeah.
So I think a carefully worded proposal here, or a motion here, which puts us on the hook for the whole amount, but looks for reimbursement to the undesignated fund for whatever is awarded by Kestrel might work.
Yes, I think we could, but that would also mean that if the grant doesn't come through, then we would be paying the entire 100 plus.
Correct. So as a commission, as a committee here, we need to decide whether we are willing to do that. number one, even if there were no reimbursement.
Yeah, and I think it can be, I think that can be worded. We'd have to be putting it up in the first place anyway. And we would be saying contingent upon receiving the grant.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily have to say contingent. We could say, the motion could say the whole amount, and as a second part or a stipulation that any awards made for this purpose through state grants be reimbursed to CPC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how we want that, and we'll need some help with that. But first of all, I think I'd like to take two different votes. I'd like to take a vote on putting, how do I want this? I think we need to separate them in the sense that one of the parts of this would indicate, I like the way you might word it, but I like somehow to make sure that we indicate that it's one or the other, but we're behind both.
Well, yeah. Without getting into semantics of it here, I think we can do that by a motion calling for the total amount.
Yeah.
And then by saying, if any awards are granted to the town of Southampton for this purpose, that those monies be reimbursed equally to the commission, to the committee. But yeah, the only reason why I'm saying this is that it could be very, very awkward to go to town meeting with two separate items here. And we need to, as a committee, we need to decide whether we are willing to go on the hook for the entire amount, assuming that nothing else comes. But if something else does, then we would like to be reimbursed.
Yeah, I think that's fine if people feel they want to go for the whole amount.
Right.
So, is there any other comments?
Just a question to Mark. This is Cindy. I cannot remember what Bridget said. When do these awards usually get made? When are we likely to find out if the grant is successful?
I would imagine, I would have to look, honestly, to tell you the truth. If it's a spring application, we would hear midsummer. If it is a summer application, we'd hear the end of fall. I'm sorry, I couldn't look. I'm actually on the Mass Pike right now, taking my son to a basketball game that was rescheduled. That's why I don't have this material in front of me. I'm sorry, or I would be looking it up.
I think we discussed at the last meeting that it is very likely that we would have a town meeting before we even knew whether there was going to be any grant monies coming towards this. So I think it would be safe for us to assume that we won't know before town meeting.
Cindy and everyone, if I could just add, I do believe, if I'm correct, that what you were just discussing about agreeing to provide the whole amount unless there was reimbursement opportunity in state grant funding, I believe the warrant for the Clearwater Conservation Area was worded the same way. So if someone wanted to reference that, at least for drafting the warrant article, I think that there's something readily there for us to go to.
I think one of the differences between this one and Clearwater, though, is that all the funds for Clearwater that had to be paid for, other than with the grant, some of those funds had to come in the form of we had to borrow. We had to, the town had to take a loan. It wasn't 100% CPC funds. That's the slight difference.
No, the CPC bonded for it.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
still paying that off.
Yeah.
And the figure I gave you about that also includes that figure. That was taken out earlier, just the same as the Greenway and the other one, the park grant.
Mhm.
So those are all out, but we did have to bond for it, and it was on community preservation.
Okay. So you're right, Bob. I do remember that we will not know the results of the grant application by the time we go into town meeting, but I think we better be sure if that question gets asked, we can answer it as closely, and we will be able to by that time because it is going to be a spring application, right, Mark? So we may hear by some.
I have another person trying to get in, but I don't have a name, just a serial number. Is there a way to ask who it is?
You can ask, and you could ask for their face too.
Without actually admitting them. So how do you ask?
No, I don't think you can ask unless you just let them in.
Yeah.
Well, having been at a meeting that got bombed, I'd really like to know. But
Is it possibly Rini, because she was on
here.
and then she's not here now.
Yeah, it really disappeared.
She may be trying to get back in.
Okay, I'm gonna go with it. We have trouble, we have trouble.
It's a phone number.
The phone number, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Rini, good.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both for that.
I had a little wondered because I was at a bylaw committee meeting that got nastily disturbed by people coming in who didn't belong there.
Last I heard, Bob was proposing the way to propose the article so that it wouldn't be contingent. Is that where we are?
Yes.
We went beyond that, but
Well, it's
Okay.
I can repeat it for you. I'm proposing that if we agree, we have to agree to all this as a committee.
Yeah.
That we basically, I'll try and word it simply, go on the hook for the entire amount, and then say, if any awards or grants are made to the town of Southampton pertaining to this project, that those monies be reimbursed to the Community Preservation Fund.
Well, that's a good way to do it.
yeah, and a bid would be one article,
Yeah.
we'd be covered. So
Great.
now the question is, do we want to go? I think we need to, if there's anyone got any feelings about going the way Bob has indicated, or Bob's proposal indicates we could. How do people feel about going on the hook for over 400,000?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm 100% in favor of this. This is not just buying open space. We know there's a sentiment in town. How much open space do we really need? This is different. This is drinking water protection. And so I'm totally in favor of this. I think it's the purpose of having this kind of fund to do something which is for the benefit of the largest part of the community. And even if you have a well, this is protecting not just our town well, but our private wells as well. So I'm in favor of it, the full amount.
Land, the space, if we don't get it, what would happen? Would houses be built there or what would happen?
Well, there are an area that could have, I don't think on the whole thing.
The landowners have already been approached by a developer. This is directly from Mary Beth Courtney's mouth. She came to an open space committee meeting and she said, and she didn't say who the developer was, but this person sat with the family and carved out the potential for, I think 9 or 10 lots, and then more could be built. And it's right there next to the Manhan River. Were you there at that meeting, Mark? Did you get anything from Mary Beth Courtney about that? About how?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I believe it was 7 or 8 lots, but yes, it absolutely could be developed. There's interest. As we all know, one of the tough things about farmland is that it's flat and it drains well. So yes, there could easily be a subdivision, a cul-de-sac road built there. So there is interest. Of course, if this didn't come through, if the grant didn't come through, we would certainly look at other conservation programs. But I think this one really makes the most sense for this property if the town indeed wants to protect it. It makes the most sense to own it as water supply land. But again, it is palpable, and that would be, a very possible outcome for it, because the family does not want to really continue holding on to the land much longer.
The wording of the request to CPC certainly it makes no mention of open space preservation. It is very specific to aquifer and that sort of thing. So I find it hard to believe that there would be great opposition to this. I'm firmly in favor of going on the hook for the whole amount, and there is more than a 50-50 chance that there would be a reimbursement here. This is not the first time this family, I don't know if you all remember, but this family pre-Labrie Field wanted to have that property used for recreation purposes, and that didn't come about. Mainly it was a timing issue, but this is not the first time that family has tried to do something of this nature.
Okay, anybody else want to say anything about this? Well,
I just want to say something before. I do support it at all levels. I do think there will be opposition. I think there are people in town that are very unhappy about things not, being taken off the tax rolls. And I think we have to continue to emphasize that it's a huge water protection initiative. And by the way, our town has grown, one of the fastest growing towns in Western Mass. So I think, we just have to be smart with our growth. So I just wanted to mention that there will be opposition.
And if we are talking growth, that's a greater drain on our water. So, I think we can make that argument. So it's important to take care of the water issues, because people moving in are not going to be happy if they have horrible water or don't have water. So does someone want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make an attempt here. I've been doing a lot of talking about motions, and please feel free to interject. So I move that we designate the amount of $443,700 from the Community Preservation Undesignated Account to be used for the Upper Pomeroy Meadow, to be used for the acquisition of 76 acres of property on Pomeroy Meadow Road for aquifer protection purposes. Further, if the town of Southampton is awarded any other grants from any agency pursuant to this project, that amount would be reimbursed to the Community Preservation Undesignated Account.
Sounds good.
Good job. I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? All right. Identify yourself and your vote.
Oh, gosh.
Palmer, yes?
Kozub, yes.
Janet, but Bob, do you have it written down? I just don't think I got every single word. Do you have that written down that you can
No, I don't, but I can,
send me in the motion?
yeah, I can send it to you.
And this is also recorded, by the way, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a way to do that. Okay, because it's very important. I think that I get it exactly like you have it. So if you could send me what the motion is, I would appreciate it.
Okay, yep, we'll do.
Thank you.
Roden, aye.
There,
Sierra?
Simmons, aye.
who else? Is there anyone else? Ahart, aye. Are there any negative votes? Any abstainers? All right, it's passed.
Great.
So that is good. Okay, that takes care of our big item.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for attending.
Oh, thank you, everyone. It was great to be with everybody again. It's been a while. And thank you to the Courtney family, obviously, for giving the town this opportunity. But I'll sign off and hopefully talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Sierra, do you have anything to tell us about what's happening with housing?
Yes, I do. Well, firstly, in the not so good news, the project that I mentioned in a couple previous meetings that Todd Barron and Bob Cannon were putting together, they have decided not to do that project after all. They looked further into it. It's on the aquifer. They needed all these additional septic system situations, and it wasn't gonna work for them. I think they're gonna keep pursuing other options, but we don't have a clear plan right now from them.
Oh dear.
So that's sad, but I do want to bring up something else on the housing front, which is that as prompted by our housing production plan, we are working on putting together a affordable housing trust. And Dwight Piper from the select board is sort of leading the charge. But we met this morning with someone from Mass Housing, something or other, who helps put these things together. She got some funding to, or I guess it's just pro bono assistance rather than funding. So they're sort of helping guide us through the process. And I just wanted to, the CPC would ideally be on board with this. And in the creation of the trust, we would need to figure out how the trust and the CPA funding would work together. And, to start off the trust in the first place, we would probably want to use CPC funds for that. And our consultant said that 200,000 would be a good starting place. So I guess my questions are, A, would that need to go through the usual CPC application process? And B, is there interest and support in this group? And I just want to let you guys know that a CPC rep can be on the Housing Trust board. So if you're interested in, still being a part of deciding what this money gets spent on, you could be a part of the board of the trust, and you would still have that influence. So thoughts?
I know there's a way to, we would probably have to take this to the town meeting.
Oh yeah.
Move that money to the trust. Then when it becomes the trust's You don't have to ask anything you take from the trust. You don't have to ask for town meeting.
Right. So ideally, if this were to work out, at the fall, we're aiming for the fall town meeting to get the housing trust approved. And if you guys were on board, we would also hope to get the fund transfer approved for that same town meeting.
Yeah, we need to find out, there's legalities that would have to be met to move that. There's been discussion in some times, you know, they said, oh, don't go the trust route. And then other times they're saying that's the way to go. So those things we'd have to find out. And we'd have to find out what kind of restrictions the trust would have to put on the funds too. But there's a lot of materials. I think going to the coalition, the Community Preservation Coalition, and then following a link to the housing would give you a lot of information. So that might be a way to get started. And then you could discuss it over the, you know, take your time and discuss it so it isn't a rushed kind of thing. And yes, have it ready for the fall meeting. Would be my plan. I don't know how the others feel about it, but if we can get something going and get something done with the housing, you know, we need the housing, and we also need not to have all that money sitting there doing nothing.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that was sort of the main impetus for creating the trust, is because there's so little town-owned property that could be used for affordable housing, and you know, see the kind of roadblocks we run into when people try to develop things. Sometimes, you know, the best viable option would be to buy existing property or existing housing and convert it to affordable housing. And as I'm sure you all know, because you've been around longer than me, the main problem with that is that the market's so quick with real estate that it gets snatched up before we can get it to town meeting. So the kind of main impetus for creating this is so we can jump on property sales and things like that faster and actually get them.
Once in a while, a nice little home comes up, and before anything can be done, it's purchased and it's worked on and sold as a much bigger, expensive house.
Yeah.
I have a question, Sierra. You mentioned 200,000, and I believe that the fund, the Community Housing Fund, it holds greater money than that. And I say this because I'm looking at old minutes from CPC way back in October. And at that point, the line item for community housing was $381,000. Are you saying that it would be like seed money for the trust for only 200,000, or would you be looking for all of the community housing money, do you think?
We would start with 200 just as seed money, like you said. I guess partly because we think people, you know, the town is more likely to agree to that with a trust that's just established. And then once we sort of, you know, put it together a little more, the trust is established, you know, it's legal, we see some projects coming up, then maybe we could transfer more as needed. But the 200,000 would be enough to kick us off for sure.
And you're going to continue to get funds every time people pay taxes.
Yeah, we're going to look at all different ways that we can, you know, have various income go into this. For example, if with the inclusionary zoning bylaw, if someone were to fall under that that quota where they, you know, they build 10 houses, they need to make an affordable house. If they chose to pay instead of make the affordable unit, that money would then go directly to the housing trust.
Yeah.
Would this be a tax deductible 501c3 trust? So if somebody wanted to, you know, make donations to it, would it be tax deductible to the trust?
I'll find that out. I do know that individual donations are not unprecedented, but I'm not sure right now if it's a nonprofit status, but I'll look at that up. And I welcome all questions you might have. We're going to be meeting again in a couple of weeks, and we really want to address all questions and concerns up front. So lay it on me if you have time.
Good.
Sierra, this is Rainey. I just wanted to mention that usually we don't, at least lately, haven't had a special town meeting in the fall. This year, I think it was January, February, the year before that. So I just don't want your time frames to be off. I don't know, it might be a tight timeline to be able to get this approved by April 6th. I don't know how quick this kind of pro bono assistance is happening. Just keep that in mind because, after the annual town meeting, usually we haven't been having special town meetings until the beginning of the following year.
Yes, Janet Kane brought that up as well. She, they asked when the meeting would be, and she said, I need to have between October and January, but we're aiming for September as like the goal, so it's ready in case the meeting is in October. But if it ends up being later, but it's definitely not going to be ready by the May meeting.
It won't be ready for this one. Okay, just checking.
There's a lot of considerations that have to be legal things that have to be looked into, interestingly enough. Which is why they sometimes have advised in the past not to get into it. Then again, they've turned around and said that may be the way to go. So who knows?
Yeah, I'll look at that website area that you recommended and see if it prompts me.
Yeah, I'll take you to other spots, I think, but and I would also think there may be some state regulations on housing trusts that you'd want to look into.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole creation of the housing trust is based on a specific state regulation. So the state kind of creates like a statute for the creation of the trust, and we would go with that.
Yeah. Well, this sounds like a good way, maybe, because there are occasionally a smaller house that comes up. May need work, but by the time the people that buy it work on it, it's not affordable anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of the grants that are available through like One Stop and things like that, they rely on you already having the property. Like we can get all sorts of grants for renovation and conversion, but not if we don't have anything to work on.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing, and maybe Virginia can correct me if I'm not right, but has there ever been any utilization of that particular pot of money under CPC, that community housing, in all the time that you've had that we've had CPC in our town? Or is that just that amount just keep growing and growing? And in which case, if there hasn't been, or even only once or something, to me, this sounds like a great way to use this fund with the sort of ease and fluidity that Sierra is describing.
We've never had in the 20 years something come up to really provide housing for people. It's always, the only really thing that's helped anybody is the funds that we put in the hands of the almoners to help people keep their property, or maybe fix ramps and things, which was legal at one time, but isn't now. And the use of it at one time to do a housing inventory here in town, but that's so old, you don't, it's useless now. So, I think that was $10,000. And other than that, it's all the money that's just sitting there piling up.
And again, as of June 21, there was like $414,000 in that account.
It's over 5 now, of course.
I'm sure.
So,
well, if you want us to take more, I mean, if you're worried there's too much money in there, we could take more than 200,000.
well, you might want to talk about that and decide a higher figure.
Yeah.
That it's going to.
I think you should.
Yeah.
My daughter's looking for a house right now. If you need to, it's not spent, it's just putting it into the trust. I just think that right now it's impossible to get a house for $200,000.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, looks like something's going to happen in this.
We're trying.
Let's see if there's, well, I don't have anything else that's definitely here. I had some areas people might have reported on, but I don't see anyone to do that. So is there anything else that needs to come before us? I'll just mention one thing, give you a heads up. I think that this is going to happen. The plan was when community preservation could fund the Greenway. If you remember, the town had voted to do a bond issue on the Greenway. And the plan was at this annual town meeting, if that occurred, which it did, that they would take that issue off of the bonding, which would mean it would be immediately on our tax rate. So the problem is that when that comes up, there are going to be people who are going to say, I'm not going to vote for that because we voted, the town voted to have that Greenway, and now you're taking it off. And we've got to make sure people know that community preservation picked it up. It's not disappearing. We're not saying goodbye, Greenway. But there could be people that would get confused and vote no, they don't want to take it off. And it actually will affect your tax rate because it's being paid for as a bonding issue the way it was written. So you want to see, I won't say your taxes go way down, but if you want to see one more thing moved out of that, but there's a fear that people will misunderstand and think we're voting down the Greenway. So that could be out there for town meeting. Is there anything else?
Not for me. I move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, those in favor, say aye,
Aye.
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 and we're adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.